The Xbox Series X is still showing why it's the most powerful console on the market. So 30 frames per second, it's been something that has been the hottest topic right now when it comes to these consoles, the Xbox Series S, X, and the PlayStation 5. We know that we've been promised 60 frames per second, and I would say for the first 2 years of the consoles, we have pretty much been given the 60 frames per second across most of these big games. But in the last 2 weeks or so, we're seeing Gotham Knights at 30 frames per second, and we are seeing Plague Tale Requiem at 30 frames per second with a 40 FPS mode at 120 hertz. And these are two just brand new big games. Now, the biggest thing that came out of this with the announcement of the 30 FPS was that people were trying to blame the Xbox Series S as to why we are getting 30 FPS and that it is holding back this generation of console. I've made multiple videos talking about why I don't think that is true, why I don't believe in, why I think it is a bogus argument so far with the Xbox Series S. And now we have Digital Foundry diving into a Plague Tale Requiem and doing their analysis on the performance of these games. And again, this is another thing showing that it is definitely not the Xbox Series S's fault and that the Xbox Series X is still the most powerful console on the market. And I think going forward, as more games become more taxing on the consoles, the Xbox Series X is going to continue to outshine the PlayStation 5 just because it has more raw power. So people love these comparisons. I like looking at them as well. And I think the last few games or so, Xbox has been outperforming the PlayStation 5. Don't quote me on that. I haven't looked at every single one, but from what I'm seeing more consistently now, it is that the Series X is just getting the overall better performance. And we're seeing it again here with the Plague Tale Requiem, which is an absolutely stunning, beautiful game that is definitely pushing these consoles, or definitely at least pushing us further into the actual next generation games in terms of how they look graphically. And the biggest drawback of all, which I found interesting because not very many people actually complained about this when you compare how many people complained about it with Gotham Knights, was that it is a 30 FPS game on both the PS5 and the Xbox Series S and X. And again, it has that 40 FPS mode, but it is having to be played on a 120 hertz display. So if you are playing on a big screen TV or something that is 60 hertz, you're not going to be able to get that 40 FPS. But we'll dive into that because it doesn't really make, I think, a big difference based on the results that we are seeing here. So basically, the PS5 and the Xbox Series X are at native 1440p resolution with reconstructing up to 4K using a temporal solution, while the Xbox Series S is stuck at 900p as the native figure. And specifically, the Xbox Series S doesn't have some of the features like they say here. Ambient occlusion takes a hit, leading to less shaded foliage, while foliage in general appears less dense at range. Otherwise, this is the same game across all three platforms, though the PlayStation 5 does make good use of the DualSense adaptive trigger. So that's, I guess, the advantage of the PlayStation 5 version is if you like the adaptive triggers, you're going to have that. But again, these features not being available on the Xbox Series S, I don't think is a problem. Just with the fact, again, it's a $299 console. People, I think, always forget that, and they're expecting it to do this insane stuff for $300. It does very, very well for the price that you're paying for the hardware. And then when it comes to the performance of the game, the FPS, this is where things get extremely interesting. The Xbox Series X and the Xbox Series S both outperform the PlayStation 5 in terms of having smoother frames and less frame drops. It says here, performance is a touch controversial because not only does the game target 30 frames per second, it can actually fall short of that number, but at least the 30 FPS update is evenly frame paced with adaptive screen tearing kicking in on all three when the engines are pushed. I'd also stress that 95% of the time you're getting a smooth 30 FPS line here with no issues. The Xbox Series X is the best and the most consistent performer of the three, and I've barely seen much more than a single frame drop here, even in the most taxing spots. And one of the main things of this game is how many rats they can get on screen. We know that. I think right now with this version, they said it was about 300,000 they can get on screen, which is a massive increase from 5,000 that they're able to get on Innocence, which really does just show you the big jump and the big difference between where we were in 2019 to where we are now in 2022 with the power of the current generation consoles that we have out. And then it goes on to say here, it's not a pretty picture with PlayStation 5, however, which offers up a less stable 30 FPS release all around, though largely still very solid. So it says here, equally, the Series X's flat 30 clearly drops into the mid-20s, on the PlayStation 5 in areas involving heavy transparency effects like fire, and the majority of it still plays in 30 FPS. They said that right at the beginning, that overall 95% of this game is going to run perfectly fine no matter what machine you're playing on. So people love to compare these things. I love to compare these things. I like to look at it as well. But at the end of the day, the Series X is running the game better than the PlayStation 5, but is it going to make a huge difference in your enjoyment of the game? Probably not. Even though they say here, expect drops to be much more regular on PlayStation 5 in its current state. And then curiously, the Series S falls between the two of them. Overall, consistently is closer to the Series X in overall robustness, again barring select moments with a huge surge of rats. In terms of performance, the drop to 900p on the Series S does appear to be well judged and a benefit in the visuals and frame rate balance. And that's always something that developers have to balance with the Series S. How low do you gotta bring that resolution to make sure you're getting that steady frame rate? Unfortunately, with this one, it's a 30 FPS game, and they are actually saying in the article and in the performance review that it's pushing the consoles very, very hard right now, and it could be just the development of the game, all the stuff that they are putting in there, that they had to go with that 30 FPS, and maybe there was no way to get it at a stable 60 FPS right now, at least, unless they can go back and optimize it to release this game where it is a 60 FPS release like it was with A Plague Tale: Innocence. Then we get over here to the 40 FPS mode with the 120 hertz display, and it's pretty much the same story. The Series X runs at the best. You do see drops to the 30 FPS line in the taxing areas with the rats and the fire, but when it comes to the PlayStation 5, you see drops into the 20s, and then again with the Series S, is closer actually along to the lines of the PlayStation 5. And they're saying here the 30 FPS mode is probably the best way to run this game. So I think there's a couple of interesting points here from this performance review. One, we are seeing that the raw power of the Series X is going to continue to outperform the PlayStation 5 going forward when developers are pushing these consoles. The second thing is that with this game, as they said, they are pushing the consoles. Does this mean that we are going to be getting more 30 FPS games on them going forward? If so, I think that will be very disappointing for a lot of people. I'm still pretty hopeful that a lot of developers are seeing what's going on in the last couple of weeks with Gotham Knights in particular, and they are going to make the correct optimizations for their games coming out to make sure that they are at 60 FPS, or at least give that performance toggle so that you can turn off things within the game. You can take off some features if you want to hit that 60 FPS. I believe that that is going to happen, but we will have to wait and see on all that going forward. Then the final thing here, which is the most relevant thing I think right now with all of the chatter going on about the Xbox Series S, is that, again, another point for the Xbox Series S that it is not holding back this generation. A developer was able to get this game running more steady in terms of the FPS, even though it's 900p. I understand that, but that's all part of their optimization to make sure that the Xbox Series S is running smoothly. It's running more smooth in terms of frame rate than the PlayStation 5. So all of these things that people have been bringing up with the Series S holding back the generation, right now it isn't showing. It may in the future, and we'll talk about that when that happens. But as of the current state of the consoles, the Xbox Series S is still an incredible console for $300, and I don't think that's going to be changing anytime soon. But that's it for me, guys. Let me know your thoughts on this. What do you think about A Plague Tale: Requiem, the game itself, and the fact that it is running best on the Xbox Series X? If you enjoyed this video, make sure to hit that thumbs up button. If you're new here, if you liked what you saw, consider hitting that subscribe button. Thank you all for watching. Thank you for your support, and I'll catch you in the next video.